welcome to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Barjo, and it's good to be back to normal this week. Hex, you've changed your hair again.
Well, the den of gaming is hardly ever normal, Badge, but we do our best. Coming up the show, we spiral into space with our old friend Mario and our review of Super Mario Galaxy 2.
And we catch up on the arcadey racing of split-second velocity.
And do you think you're addicted to gaming? Ajax will talk to some reformed gaming junkies to find out what life's like on the other side.
But first, can you guess this week's The Game for this week?
News time, Barjo. I suppose I should read it because I didn't do it last week, so...
Well, I didn't do it last week either, so I should probably read it. What?
Oh!
Good game!
So you're gonna read the news? Whoa! Bollocks!
Canadian programmer Andrew Wade has created the first ever self-replicating life form using the 2D mathematical simulator game called The Game of Life. Dubbed Gemini, it consists of two multi-armed creatures at opposite ends of a loop of instruction tape. Acting like DNA, this chunky spool feeds instructions to the arms on how to assemble identical copies of itself. Wade's creation is unprecedented in the game of life and could have far-reaching implications in the field of nanotechnology, biology, and of course, games. All Points Bulletin fans have discovered that the online Cops and Robbers extravaganza will include in-game radio ads for real-world products and services.
I look like I'm joking.
The ads can be triggered as frequently as once every 3 hours and will stream over VoIP when entering new zones. Subscribers have the option of paying an extra fee to eliminate the ads, but none of this really matters to Australian gamers since APB isn't even being launched here. Real-Time Worlds crunched the numbers and decided that setting up an Oceanic server just wouldn't be worthwhile. Outspoken CEO of Activision Blizzard, Bobby Kotick, the man who once boasted that he was taking all the fun out of making video games, has dropped another clanger, stating that if it were in his power, I would have Call of Duty be an online subscription service tomorrow. While Kotick went on to justify this in terms of creating a more compelling experience for gamers, it appeared transparent to hardcore FPS fans that what Kotick really wants is to duplicate the ultra-profitable subscription model of World of Warcraft and have Call of Duty fans make regular payments to play their favorite franchise. China has introduced yet another restriction on its citizens. From August 1, online games aimed at under 18s will be forbidden from having any kind of unwholesome content. Content considered to be unwholesome will include anything judged to promote violence, gambling, cults, pornography, or even superstition. Minors will also be prohibited from buying or selling any in-game items with virtual currency. Good news for adventure game fans, The Silver Lining has been saved. Created by fans of the King's Quest series of puzzle adventure games, this unofficial sequel had been in legal limbo ever since Activision placed a cease and desist on it back in March. But now Activision and indie developer Phoenix Online have reconciled their differences, and the first episode of The Silver Lining will be released as freeware in mid-July. Hex, I've seen more than a few games in my time combine the joys of racing with the thrills of explosion, but I've got to take my imaginary hat off to BlackRock Studios' Split-Second Velocity because this game has more explosions than any of them all put together.
You know what, Barjo? I love explosions.
Me too.
You know what else I love?
What?
Montages.
Splodgetage! Explosion montage.
Splodgetage! As you can see, this racer has its roots firmly in the arcade realm, bordering on the kart racing realm. You'll find yourself screaming around tracks at full throttle, only rarely tapping the brakes to enter into massive drifts, while frantically dodging parts of the course as it blows up in your face. It's tense.
Tense indeed. There's no weapons here. Instead, there's these things called power plays, and you activate these, which causes destruction around the track to take out your opponents. Frankly, who needs red shells when you can make frickin' planes fall out of the sky?
To earn a power play, you first need to fill up a chunk of your power meter, and you do this by drifting into turns, drafting behind opponents, getting some air, or having a close call with another power play.
And when you fill it right up, you do a mega power play, which results in really huge explosions, or even changing the course of the track, which also results in really huge explosions.
love the power play mechanic badge. I mean, at first I thought it was a bit simple, but I mean, there really is a nice bit of strategy to it. I mean, did you hold on to your power play and use it to change the course, or do you use them as you earn them to knock out a player that's in front of you? I mean, who doesn't love a button that blows stuff up?
If only we had another montage to demonstrate that. The racing itself is pretty straightforward though. You only ever crash from head-on collisions or an unavoidable power play. You can bumper your way around the track without losing too much speed pretty safely. There's also a Mario Kart-like perpetual comeback system which will keep you in the race, and success really depends on good drifting and proper use of your power plays.
I did find the drifting a little bit touchy at times though with some cars. I mean, mostly it felt like how I like my drifting, but it can be easy to overdrift and end up facing a wall.
Yeah, that happened to me a few times too. I guess it's because I had this pedal to the metal kind of mentality, but it wasn't until I started backing off the accelerator that you can straighten up from a bit of wonk.
And thanks to that catch-up mechanic, you'll be finding plenty of instances where you're coming first on the last lap, only to get wiped out and find yourself coming last all of a sudden.
What a noob.
What a noob. Or vice versa, where you're sure you won't get a podium finish, only to pull off the perfectly timed power play and snatch first place. It's always a close race, which can be either really exciting or just really frustrating.
There's not a huge variety in the maps, there's just not enough really, but I found the power plays helped things keep interesting because the way changes every time.
Yeah, sometimes on a 3-lap race, you won't actually race the same route more than once, so you really need to be on your toes to keep an eye out for new potential hazards.
I did like the quick reset after a crash. There's nothing more frustrating in a racing game than crashing and then just being stuck in last for the whole rest of the race, but here I think they got it kind of perfect.
And plus, all of this madness is presented within the context of some reality TV show that I wish actually existed, Barjo.
What would it be called?
SplitSecond Explosionosity.
It's a terrible name.
If you like insanely fast cars and explosive action, you've come to the right place.
There are 12 episodes to play through that all have 4 main events, a bonus event and a final elite race that counts towards winning the overall grand prize in a show. And you don't actually have to finish every race in the episode to progress. Usually after 2 or 3 races, you'll unlock the elite race, and once you beat that, it'll unlock the next episode. And I really like this kind of progressive unlocking badge because it means I can play more of the races I like and less of the ones I didn't.
Yeah, and there's some crazier stuff too, like Airstrike, where you have to dodge missiles being fired at you from a chopper, or Survival, where you try to overtake as many big rigs as possible while they dump exploding barrels out the back of them.
It's a shame that there's only 3 of those modes in multiplayer though, with race, elimination and survival. I was just really hoping for some awesome airstrike modes, but alas. Oh, speaking of multiplayer, there is a split screen. It was good to see that in there, but it's only for 2-player though. And I would have thought that a game that's so much like a kart racer, they would have had that 4-player split screen. It would have been the perfect icing on the cake.
I don't know, to me this felt more like a Burnout game than a Mario Kart game, so I didn't really mind that too much. And there was no lag online, so that was fine. Except online, your cars are tied to the single-player campaign, so if you haven't beaten that, you're probably going to be at the back of the pack for online races. I guess that's incentive.
SplitSecond is a very pretty game too, I thought. The cars and tracks look great, particularly when they're getting destroyed. There's some fancy lighting going on.
Yeah, it's quite spectacular, isn't it? Yeah, it's such a spectacular game. It was a real shame that there's no replay or photo feature here.
Yeah, especially considering the TV show focus of the presentation. I mean, you'd think that a cool replay feature would be a given.
Yeah, I like how they got the whole HUD on the back of the car though. It means you don't have to keep looking left to see what's going on. You can see it all there. That was a nice touch.
Yeah, it was really cool. Another thing that I thought was really lacking was the music. I mean, there just wasn't really enough of it, was there?
No, my favourite racing game of all time is still Burnout 3 Takedown because of the music track, and also it was a pretty sweet game.
I think in SplitSecond, when you hear the same track for the 30th time, it starts to drive you a little bit crazy.
Yeah, it does. SplitSecond isn't trying to be anything too deep. It's just fast-paced action and lots of explosions, so I'm giving it 8 out of 10 rubber chickens. What about you?
Yeah, I agree with you. It's an 8 from me as well.
Double 8!
Double 8! Explosions.
In Modern Warfare 1, I am still stuck. I play on Veteran, okay, and I'm still stuck on that airplane level, and I cannot get through it on Veteran, and I'm not gonna dumb it down, and I have I don't know if I have I have like 870 achievement points on it, and I want to get 1,000 because all the other Call of Duties I got 1,000, and I just can't get it. It's a timed mission, and it's like the extra bonus mission, and I wish I could complete it, and every time I go back, it just frustrates me, and I throw my controller in there while I turn on multiplayer, and it's like, screw this, so. Yeah, it's a hard one.
Good game.
Surely being addicted to playing a video game hardly rates a mention when compared to something like drugs, alcohol, or gambling addiction.
Well, gaming may not be as physically life-threatening, but it can be just as destructive in day-to-day living, as these gamers and Ajax found out.
I would be playing pretty much any spare moment that I had.
It's not so much how I found time to play the game, it's more a question how I found time to do everything else.
I was playing EverQuest every single day without fail, 18 hours a day.
Many of us won't think twice about staying up all night with a new game. Maybe cancel plans with friends to stay home and play. Or tell ourselves that study can wait. But does this mean we're suffering from an addiction?
There's a lot of contention about whether or not video game addiction exists. If you define addiction as losing control over your involvement in an activity and experiencing some harm, then we have studies that show that around 1 to 2% of video game players meet the criteria for addiction. In studies of online video games, this increases to about 8 to 10%.
My parents and everything were getting pretty annoyed with us playing games all the time. We're always in the house playing games. So eventually we got a caravan. We decided to park that out in the back of the bush. The process that we used for setting up the caravan for optimal gaming, we actually called planetary defences. We'd cover every single bit of the caravan. Any light that was getting in anywhere, we'd cover it up with whatever we could, whether that be cardboard or pillowcases.
There were a few negative impacts to playing. Health-wise especially, I felt that sitting in a chair for that long, it made me very stiff. I had a sore back a lot of the time. I'd get tired eyes.
What criteria are used to identify someone suffering from an addiction?
There are 6 addiction criteria. There's cognitive salience, meaning that the object or activity is the most important thing in your life and you think about it all the time.
If I was sitting around in a car doing nothing, all I'd think about is, could be playing flight control. Could be playing flight control. If I was sitting in a church, say, I'd be going, flight control, flight control, flight control.
The game was definitely the most important thing in my life. And I struggle with this, because they're sort of like the devil and the angel on your shoulders, You really don't want it to be the most important thing in your life, and you try and tell yourself that it isn't the most important thing in your life, but actions speak louder than words.
There's withdrawal, a negative mood state created by time spent away from the activity or object.
I would definitely be disappointed, maybe a little annoyed if something came up when I had something planned for the game.
You almost get a little bit of a panic, that you need the games to give you that excitement once you've experienced it so long,
Tolerance, meaning you have to spend increasing amounts of time invested in the activity to feel the same euphoric effects.
You would log on thinking, I'll just spend 1 hour doing this short little dungeon. I would always play a little longer than I wanted to.
When you would otherwise get sick of it, you go, look, I've played for 8 hours. I might as well play for 9 and go for a high score.
There's mood modification, which is a sense of euphoria or excitement associated with use of the object.
It's always exciting, and I loved the feeling of I've done everything that I need to do,
If I was doing something tough or boring or hard, thinking to myself, okay, once you finish this, you can reward yourself with another hour of flight control.
Relapse, breaking a period of abstinence and resuming high levels of involvement in the activity.
When I stopped my account, I had the intention of coming back. It was a temporary thing while I was studying. I just didn't want the lure of it being there because I knew I would log on and just waste time.
And conflict, harmful consequences of involvement.
I lost a lot of sleep. Often before a normal day of work or a day of uni, I would stay up till 3 a.m. or something very easily.
It's affected my work for years and years, especially when I was employed by other people, I used to sort of get up into work, and people could tell I had eyes like I'd been, welding without a mask or something, these big red bloodshot eyes. And they're like, you've been up late, have you? And I'm like, how can you tell,
What are some of the features of games that can lead to people investing so much time in them?
The reward structures in games and the social elements of games are 2 significant risk factors for people becoming addicted.
If you wanted to ride something really cool, you'd have to collect hundreds of materials just to do that.
You want to get to the level cap before the next guy. You want to have better equipment or better whatever,
Sometimes you would have to grind and grind like the same computer components over and over again. it actually wasn't that fun.
To get up to a really high score, you're talking 12, 13 hours. It's a long game. Having said that, you can pause. So the games would often last me 2 or 3 days.
You're motivated to go as hard as you can and level up as quickly as you can, you know? The sad thing is the bloke that you're trying to compete against is doing exactly the same thing. So you're pushing each other on as hard as you can, you know, and before you know it, the sleep is starting to go out the window.
My best score was 5th on the leaderboard. I haven't checked it recently. That score now is probably about 6 millionth. But at the time, I was number 5 in the world and number 2 in Australia. There was some bastard from Australia who kept on just beating me. Honestly, I'd beat his score and I'd put it in the leaderboard and I'd find that he had just that day beaten the score again. Oh, that bastard. If I could find him.
I did feel bound to the game to some extent because of the responsibilities of being an officer in a guild. You have to settle disputes. The people want things and you have to try and provide it to them.
If you commit to being a part of something like this and you don't attend, it's sort of like, you know, not attending a soccer match or a football match that you were supposed to play in. Even if you should really be doing other things like spending time with your family or showering or whatever, you know, for that matter, you end up not doing that because, you've got obligations in the game.
I do think, though, we have to be careful about assigning a clinical label to a behaviour like video games. For many people, it's just a healthy pastime. They may play video games a lot, it may be the most important thing in their life, but they're not necessarily addicted to the game. So we need to be respectful too that there's an actual culture of video game playing and they may not experience any negative consequences whatsoever from playing games.
When you go through my life, I have a very long track record of becoming obsessed with things for a couple of months and then just dropping them. So I never thought to myself, oh my God, I'm going to become some guy in a shack with a beard playing flight control in 40 years' time. I never thought that was really an option.
I haven't broken my addiction. I have not broken my gaming addiction or obsession or whatever you want to call it. I still play as hard as I possibly can. I wish I was playing games right now, actually. Yeah, but if it wasn't for EverQuest, I would not have sold my EverQuest character. If I didn't sell my EverQuest character, I wouldn't have gone and found this job at where I started working fixing the computer. And where I started fixing computers was where I met my wife. I probably wouldn't have my 2 children at the moment and the business that I do and everything.
I can say that I was addicted to the game. I didn't mind being addicted. Even though I played really long hours and I was fairly obsessed about it, it was controlled.
If you go out and meet all your responsibilities and do all the things you're supposed to do, and you're like, everything's done now, then you can sort of sit down and really enjoy your gaming time without any sort of niggly stuff in the back of your head going, oh man, I should be doing this or I should be doing that, you know, you just sort of can sit down and really enjoy it. So these days, that's what I try to do.
I set rules that I'm never going to indulge my obsession in this circumstance or in that circumstance. As long as you've got boundaries, I think it's okay. It's when the people who don't have boundaries, I think it gets a bit out of control.
Good game.
It's him, Mario. And after a brief spell with his feet firmly on the ground, he's once again blasting into outer space to spoil us with more galactic gaming goodness. Woohoo!
Everyone's favourite dungaree-wearing tradesman is once again called into action to plumb some pipes, crush some Koopas, and reclaim a whole universe full of stars. And the game has to start somewhere, so true to Mario tradition, it starts here.
Wait, really, Bajo? I mean, we've had 25 years of giant turtles kidnapping royalty.
I would be upset if it was anything else. It's traditions and stuffs.
What to heck with tradition, Bajo? To heck, I say. Of course, if you've played Mario games before, you've probably learned to live without any substantial storyline to motivate you. Really, it's best to just jump in and start waggling.
And there's plenty to waggle at. New galaxies, new superpowers, and a few old friends to help you.
Yes, the first big news is that Yoshi is back. The cute green dinosaur is Mario's mount of choice, and his flutter jump and super long tongue will both keep you out of trouble and help you get into some.
Yoshi can eat your enemies and then poop out star bits, which you collect by moving your Wiimote cursor over them, just like in the first game.
Once collected, you can use the star bits for a variety of purposes. You can fire them at enemies, or you can feed them to the chubby, hungry Lumas, which then transform into new galaxies for you to conquer.
Yoshi can also grip onto floating flowers, which can allow you to get to otherwise inaccessible platforms or planetoids, as well as eat a few superfruits to gain the power of berry gas, chili speed, or eggplant glow, all of which help you solve the mysteries of the galaxy.
Other toys include the cloud mushroom, which give Mario the ability to create fluffy white platforms out of thin air, and the rock mushroom, which transform Mario into an unstoppable rolling boulder at the slightest Wiimote waggle.
Other suits like Bee Mario and Fireflower Mario return as well, and all of these little toys add up to make for some interesting level design and ways to play. And Hex, I didn't get bored once here.
I don't think it's possible to get bored playing this game, Barger, because there's just so much to do. Each galaxy has at least 3 stars to collect, and you'll need at least 70 to make it to Bowser's final lair. But even if you do make it that far, you've only just scratched the surface of Super Mario Galaxy 2 because there's almost 250 stars to collect, and plenty of new areas to open up and explore after you finish the initial quest.
All of these levels are displayed on an old school map screen, and I did miss the hub world of the previous game, Hex, but this one kind of makes up for it by getting to fly around in a spaceship shaped like Mario's head.
Starship Mario is a nice little addition. You can store any excess star bits you leave in the bank, collect your mail, and some of the friends you meet in your adventure will join you there. One thing I really did miss though, Barger, was that Nintendo haven't included any of the super challenging pure jumping stages from the first game. You know, it's one of my favourite things from the original, so I was really sad that it was a no-show this time.
That didn't bother me at all, Hex, because I think Mario Galaxy 2 is challenging enough as it is, especially towards the end. The later levels are hair-tearingly frustrating. And I think the developers realize this because if you suck too much, a ghost version of Princess Rosalina will pop up to help you along the way. And also, they've included a DVD with the game to teach noobs how to play, not that I used it.
You'll perform some moves in this game by pointing the Wii remote at your TV screen.
Yeah, you so used it. You're all over that DVD. Help me, DVD!
There are other moves like the side somersault, performed by jumping in the opposite direction while running, and the triple jump, performed by jumping 3 times in a row with the right timing.
Longtime Mario players might find these noob-helping features an insult to their gaming skills, but they're both optional, and you're right, this game is really hard in places, so, you know, a beginner might be turned off by a particularly hard section if they didn't have any help. Badge, it's not really a huge leap forward in terms of game design. I mean, we've seen most of these gravity-defying tricks before, and the game actually steals a lot of content, not just from the first Super Mario Galaxy, but from a lot of other Mario games, like this homage to Super Mario 64.
I'm not sure if that's a bad thing, though. For me, Mario was all about nostalgia.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, the game is definitely a refinement, but it also often feels like you're retreading well-worn ground here. I mean, especially since Super Mario Galaxy 2 faces you against many of the same bosses from Super Mario Galaxy 1, like this guy, and even this guy. I mean, it's just a typical example of cut-and-paste game design. It's just made me a bit sad.
It really straddles that line of being disappointed and bored to reliving the past. As much as I wanted to mark it down for that though, Hex, I just couldn't. It's undeniably fun. There's heaps of other new stuff here and it's completely challenging. It's just the kind of game that makes you happy to be a gamer. I'm giving it 10 out of 10 rubber chickens.
It's one of the best games of the year and certainly the best platformer since the first Super Mario Galaxy, but it's just that cut and paste that brought it down to a 9 out of 10 from me.
Good game.
So, could you guess the game for this week? It was Donkey Kong Jungle Beat from 2005, a GameCube game in which you controlled the actions of Donkey Kong by slapping on bongos, and one of the first games made by Super Mario Galaxy 2 director Koichi Hayashida.
Well, that's it for another episode of Good Game this week. We'll be back next week with some biggies.
Snake has stealthed his way onto the PSP again with Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker.
We'll be battling the war against Cybertron in the latest Transformers game, and it's not bollocks.
Autobots, roll out.
Plus, the sequel to Aussie-developed Puzzle Quest 2.
And we'll be meeting the team behind Beach Daz.
Basically, we've got that, and then if we add like dynamo, he probably won't have it, but like rope dynamics, so they can lift it all up, and then basically all we need is
Old mate just comes in and eats them all.
Until next week, gamers, Barjo out.
Hex out.
Give me the bongos.
Oh no.
You can't be trusted with them.
Oh.
Check out my giant bongos.